So everyone is back. Let's start. Okay. Now, one of the concepts which is opposite of CIA Triad, that is the confidentiality, integrity, and availability triad, is the DAD triad. It is also called a failure of security operations triad. Now, many times you will be asked questions to recognize this pattern. So, which is the factor? So, if confidentiality is violated, what results as disclosure? If integrity is violated, what if results as alternation of information? And if availability is violated, then destruction of information is resulted. Okay, so keep in mind this particular concept. Okay, now to protect any information, right? If you want to protect any information, right, you need some kind of control. Okay, so in the information and cyberspace, a control is something which protects the information from confidentiality and integrity threats. Even confidentiality, integrity, and availability threats. What are availability threats? What are confidentiality threats? Confidentiality threats are somebody trying to steal the information, somebody trying to read the information, somebody trying to, somebody trying to get access. Okay, even that is a violation of confidentiality. What is the violation of integrity? Somebody trying to change the information. Some authorized user trying to change the system. What are the threats of availability? Somebody is deleting the information, or a particular piece of information is not available due to some network not being available. So these are the threats to a piece of information, and you implement controls to lesser the risk of these threats on the information. Now, once you implement a control, right, the main task of the control is twofold. A control is something which controls access. Okay. Imagine a piece of information. I carry out a encryption. Okay. Now, whenever you do carry out encryption, you generally have a key. Okay. Once you encrypt it, this information is now encrypted and you require the key to open it, right? Who has the key? Okay. Who has the key means the identity of the person who has the key, or identity of a process who has the key. Okay. Then is that person, how do you establish that identity? To establish an identity, you need something called authentication. Okay. Whosoever is holding that key. Once you have given your identity and given your authentication data, what happens is authorization. Okay. So whenever you have any access control to protect the information, you need to implement a control which will establish the identity of whosoever is requesting access. Then it will authenticate that the person who's trying to claim an identity is the same person. Okay. If it is Bob, Bob says, I'm Bob. I am authorized to, take this information, read this information. The control will say, first establish your identity. How do I know you are Bob? Then second is it will try to authenticate. It will say, okay, fine. You've given me an identity. Now tell me what is your date of birth. Okay. I will have that data with me. To authenticate, I must have that data with me. Then only I will be able to authenticate. And once I have established the identity and authentication, I will authorize this particular entity, that is Bob, to access the information. Now, fine, this is fine. But what happens if Bob identity is stolen? Somebody else steals the Bob's identity and claims the information. Therefore, somebody should always audit this particular process to keep it in check. And this particular system of checking and establishing identity and access control is called IAA services. Okay, identity, authentication, authorization, audit, and accountability. Bob is accountable for his actions. The control owner, whosoever owns this control, is responsible for auditing this system is working properly or not. Okay. Now, AAA services, IAA services become core of all systems today. Okay. You want to access your laptop, you need to put a username password. You want to access your corporate network, you need a username password or some kind of a, identity matrix. Okay. You provide that and then only access is granted to you. Okay. So that is the called the IAAA or I quadruple A services. Okay. Clear? Any doubts? Okay. Great. Now, next is you have information. You want to protect its confidentiality, integrity, and availability, and you put a single control, right? You put a single control, somebody can easily jump this control and get access. Okay. And that's why whenever you are planning defenses for information, it cannot be one single layer. The moment you have one single layer, your information is exposed after a one attempt only. So what do? You generally have information, okay, security with controls laid in layers. And laying of control in layers is called series application of controls or serial application of controls. Why do you put application controls in? Why do you put controls in series? Because the threat actor has to first overcome first control, then jump to second control, jump there to third control, then only he will get access. Okay. And this, if you form an imaginary line along this controls, you see the defense of a asset is in layers. So there's first layer, the second layer, there's third layer, and then only they get access to the data asset or an asset. These rings which they form, if you draw an imaginary line around it, you have a protection rings, and these rings are called protection rings. Okay. And now since you have an asset which is in depth, what is in depth? You cannot access the asset in one go. There is someone standing, then again someone standing, again someone standing, and then only you are providing depth to the defenses of the asset. This concept is called defense in depth. Okay. You can call it multi-level security. You can call it layered security. You call it protection rings. You can call it segmentations. You can call it silos, compartments, whatever you want to call them. But the concept is defense in depth. Clear? Okay. Now let's go back to, since you all guys are network security guys, most of you, can someone give me a small example of defense in depth for our networks? Anyone? Most of you are, network guys.
IPS, IP,
Okay. So you
IPS,
have a switch. Okay. You have a
router,
IPS. You have a,
firewall,
you have a IDS.
We have MFA in place, multiple firewalls in place.
You have a firewall. You have a router. Router itself has policies. Okay. You might have a
Proxy.
proxy in between, right? You might have a proxy in between, right? You also build tunneling, right? You might
Yes.
have tunneling from router to router, right? So we have, this is a multi-layered approach to security. Okay. Any doubts? None, right? So now we will have some, now these layers can be, these protection mechanisms can be, once now you replace this information with data. What we are trying to protect? Data. Okay. So before I go ahead, I would like to, make you understand information versus information security versus cyber security. Once you look at information security take into consideration all the systems which are dealing with the information. Now, what are the systems that deal with information? You have people. What do you have? You have people, you have processes, and you have technologies. And cyber is just one of the technology which is used by people to create processes. Got it? Cyber is just one part of the technology domain of the entire information systems. Once we talk about information system, we will talk about physical security. A cyber security guy may not talk about physical security, but an information system security person is looking at the complete system holistically. And when he looks at a complete system holistically, he is looking at people, processes, and technologies, environments around it. Okay. And that's what the difference is between information system security and cyber systems.
Thank you for watching. Don't forget to subscribe our channel.